Okay, I'd like to call this meeting into session at 6:04. If you could, please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask you to please stay standing for a minute as we think about those who have gone before us. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Downey.
Here.
Trustee Craig. Here. Trustee Bushner.
Here.
Trustee Ryan.
Here.
Trustee Patton is not here yet.
Not here yet.
Trustee O'Malley.
Here.
And also Attorney Gilchrist.
All right, and Attorney Engel should be here around later this evening, 6:30, 6:45 is his hope. All right, I want to start with a few updates and announcements and correspondences. The first one is one that wasn't on the agenda. Do you have the letter about the 5K Lace for the Cure? Want some more papers? There we go. All right, we just received a letter yesterday. To whom may concern, Healers from Here Relay for Life team would like to reserve the use of the park on Saturday, April 21st, 2018, for their 6th annual Lace Up for a Cure 5K run walk, followed by a kids fun run 1K from 9 to 11 in the morning. Last year we had over 300 participants for this event and hope to have the same, if not more, this year. We would like to use the same course we have used the last 5 years. And this is from Gretchen Yankunis, team captain. Pass this around. If you guys want to approve that, we can certainly accept a motion to do that.
Motion.
Motion. Second. Any further discussion on approving this event for, what was it?
April 21st.
April 21st, 9 to 11. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Bob?
If we can just make sure that we still continue with this route.
Yeah, she wants the same route.
And it's working great. Neil's done a great job on getting it set up, and it's easy for us to handle. So.
Certainly, and that's the same route they used last time as well, right? Okay.
No problem.
Outstanding. All right. Few important updates, and I just want to have my notes ready here. First one, I want to update us, as I've been each month, on the alternate water supply study and where we're at. As you know, the state has required Honeywell and St. Gobain to develop a feasibility study to identify the options for an alternative water source for the village. I mentioned previously that the companies had submitted a draft near the end of fall. The state reviewed the draft of this report from the companies and has assured me that they are committed to ensuring it meets our mutual goals to adequately identify the various options for a potential new water source prior to it being released to the community for everyone's feedback. The state requested changes to the draft and sent it back to the companies. The state received a revised draft of the study last week that addressed a number of the concerns brought up by the state, and they are reviewing it now to ensure it adequately addresses the requirements and intentions of the consent order. They will be briefing me on this report when they are ready to, and from there, the village will work with the state to set a date for an upcoming public meeting to discuss the report and begin gathering our feedback and feedback from the community on this important study. It's important to remember that this report will not identify one specific option, rather present a range of possibilities and next steps needed to flesh out the feasibility of each of these options. A final option will only be selected after the state receives our feedback. I forgot to mention the public meeting will start, I think it's a 30-day, what's that?
Public comment.
Public comment period, thank you. It was there. So after they have the time to digest all of our recommendations, and they go through everything, a final option will only be selected after the state receives our feedback on which options make the most sense and will be incorporated into the broader remediation plan that's being developed to address the contamination in our community. I'm hoping that public meeting is weeks away, because I know we've been talking about it, I think, since probably November, as we were hoping that it would be sometime around the new year. So that is my hope on that, and that is my update on that. Do you have the blood testing update? It should have been actually probably that's the other ones. Okay, in terms of the blood testing, I have some very good stuff to report here. These basically come right from the Department of Health, so I'm just going to sort of read these to you. New York State Department of Health is committed to providing a second round of blood testing to the residents of the village of Hoosick Falls and the surrounding region. The second round will occur this spring once the weather improves. New York State DOH has been working closely with Southwestern Vermont Medical Center since October and has recently secured their agreement to offer collection services for round 2 of the blood testing effort. DOH has also learned from discussions in the community that it was important to have the option to have their blood drawn in the village. Since November 29th, Southwestern Vermont Medical Center has had a limited service laboratory at the Twin Rivers Medical Center, 16 Danforth Street in Hoosick Falls, and recently received approval from DOH to operate a patient service center at that site, effective January 2nd, 2018, for the limited purposes of the second round of blood testing, not for other testing. DOH is now working with Southwestern Vermont Medical Center to finalize the terms of the agreement and to establish a secure mechanism for transferring residents' confidential information from the PSC to the department where the blood testing will take place. And DOH will be presenting the final results of the first round of blood testing to the community, hopefully also within weeks in the next month or so. The second round of blood testing is important to demonstrate to residents that the levels of PFOA in their blood is declining as expected since the village water has been successfully treated using the GAC systems. So that is the update, and again, hopefully in the coming weeks we'll have some more information on when that meeting will be. Maybe they'll be together, maybe not, we'll see. And the last update is specific to the Woods Brook. I have that. All of you hopefully have either seen online in press releases or the letter that went in your home in your mailer in the recent water bill, the recent updates, but I want to just specify this. Give you what information I can, and I also want to additionally take questions from residents, in particular residents who would be in this area, because the questions and information that you're seeking is probably the same stuff I'm seeking, but I want to bring it back to them, so I do plan on having a follow-up meeting with them next week. We've received a bunch of separate awards. The first one was the $900,000 grant that the village and the town had gone together on and been working together for since before I became mayor, so it's been a long time. And that's going to help us take care of some of the issues up higher before the water the brook comes into the village. And that was something we've talked about and planned in previous meetings. We also recently received $1 million from the state as part of a targeted buyout program for some of the specific properties within the village where the Woods Brook comes through, in particular some of those that... The basic goal of this program is to allow the village to purchase and have access to these properties so that we can finally step back and really come up with a good long-term solution, so this isn't going to be a every few years or every decade concern. We're hoping that this $1 million will help us work with these individuals and these properties so that we can come up with a situation that works for both parties. In terms of this plan, I don't have a lot more specific information. I'm going to have a meeting with them, follow up next week. I talked to Mike Schmidt. He's in the governor's office, and he oversees HRC, the Housing and I'm not up on my acronyms yet. But anyway, he oversees one of the two agencies that's doing this with DEC. So my hope is that we can have some more specific information on how this program works, because I know that we're very excited that we have this, and this is a huge, huge, huge step. But now it's going to come to what are the details and how is this going to work and how is it going to be carried out. So once I have those details, then I will be reaching out to the specific residents and properties to start to have these discussions. It's the first step in a process. It is going to be a process. This isn't going to be a quick solution, but I don't think we ever thought it was. But the one thing we're making sure of is there's flexibility within the program. Say we come to a deal with a certain resident for the cost of their property, and they want a month to leave, but another resident wants 4 months. We get that. We understand this is not just a rigid program. They're trying to program in that flexibility so it works for everybody. so that's sort of the second bit of that on that award, and after we get through this phase of trying to acquire properties, then they also gave us some additional money to put into a study to really come up with a really good end game solution to solve this problem once and for all. Do you guys have any questions on that?
So when you're starting to look at properties, the obvious place would be on Hall Street to start.
Yeah.
We make sure that we have enough money to do the ones on Hall Street first, then go out from that area?
Yeah, there's very specific, there are priority properties, in particular with where it goes through in that corner, behind Hall Street and along Main Street, and then on the other side of Hall Street. Yes, those are all, that's sort of how we have to figure out how this program is going to work so we can start talking to residents and moving on it.
Where's Spring Street?
Spring Street is right near the
Behind the senior center.
yeah, behind the senior center, behind the Chinese restaurant. When the
Houses
Off
out,
of
right?
Elm?
yes, off
Yeah.
Elm. When the Woodsbrook makes its final culvert under 22, it comes out right underneath a building on Elm Street, Spring Street. That's why.
Capano's old store.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
There's 3 houses on Spring, right? 3 addresses.
I can't remember exactly. I'll have to double check that.
Donna Parker's,
One's
the one there, and then the
abandoned,
yellow.
there's two setbacks.
Yeah, so there's 3
Yeah.
down there.
So, any other questions? Yes.
Do you know the properties that you want to acquire?
Yes, but I haven't reached out to all of them individually, and I want to talk to them before I make a grand announcement to everyone about it. Do you have a question about a specific property?
33 Elm Street.
33. I don't know which one 33 Elm Street is.
I'm next to the
Your
one you
big
said.
sign.
You're next to the old Capano store?
You're the building right next to it. I don't know, but I will definitely bring that up to. Let me put that in my notes here to bring up. I will get back to you before you leave tonight. Leave me your number, so I can follow up with you, please. My notes. Any other questions? Yeah,
The old bagel shop that's across the street from here, that gonna go too, or is that?
that's another one I don't know of.
Okay,
Because I know that was a little bit away from the actual.
right.
It did take some serious damage, of course, but it's away from where the actual culvert runs through. All right. Any other questions? Okay. At this point, I want to open it up to people to be heard. I always want to get a sense of how many people are interested in speaking, so I can see how it's going to affect time-wise. So just have a general idea of anyone like to speak. One. Okay. One. In that case, well, you know this, but just remember to say your name and address when you start. I had a feeling you would. Take it away, sir.
My name is Kevin Allard, 5421 State Route 7, Hoosick Falls, New York. I see on your agenda where you have 2 resolutions authorizing the law firm of Nolan, Heller, and commence litigation on behalf of the Village of Hoosick Falls. And I'd like to first thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being straightforward and very transparent in everything that's been taking place since you've taken office. And I'd like to say thank you for that. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank Dave Engel for his work and what he's done and what he's hopefully brought this to, and I hope the board seriously considers taking action against Saint-Gobain and Honeywell tonight. I think that would be a very positive move towards speeding up the process of coming to a settlement. The other one is the resolution authorizing commencement of litigation on behalf of the Village of Hoosick Falls in regard to Fitzgerald, Morris, Baker, and Firth. It's unfortunate that we are at that position and that there wasn't greater due diligence done earlier regarding those legal bills, and that's completely outside of anything that you've done, Mr. Mayor, and I understand that. It's unfortunate that we're here. But you can't spend $50,000 in litigation to save $50,000 in litigation off the bill. So hopefully there's some way you have of controlling the expense so that whatever they save you, they get a portion of that, and that's their pay. And I hopefully there will be some kind of discussion on that here tonight as to how that's going to take place. But once again, I thank you for your efforts.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Let's move on as soon as I find the first page of my agenda. With permission of the board, and I wanted to start off by thanking our water department, our sewer department, and our DPW employees who spent the day working on not one water main, but also an issue at 1 Mechanic Street where there was an issue with water running in the building, and I don't mean like a little bit of water running. I mean water running.
I'd say gushing.
Gushing would probably be a better word, and they got it. They started hitting them both early this morning and took it on, and it's all remedied for now. So, thank you guys. With your permission, I'd like to move the committee reports up at this point, so that once we get through the committee reports, they can head out. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. In that case, I'm going to skip to the committee reports. Bob, anything? Okay. Karen?
Except Neil did a great job, his crew.
Sure
This
did.
weekend, oh my God. Everybody.
Oh, and all the plowing.
Praising him, yep.
Yep.
Good job, Neil.
Brian?
Just really quick, an update, reverse 911. I know the Stevens would appreciate an update. NY Alert is, they have rolled over their software to a new vendor. We received a reply from them this week. They've been instructed to halt all new onboarding of public entities smaller than county level until they finalize the layout of their system. They're targeting launch date between late March and the end of May, so just a little window. Not at all. So it is frustrating, but I'm informed it's a moving target because of the new system. As soon as they have the approval to bring on people below the county level, we will be the first to know. So hopefully they make that call in March.
All right. Thank you. Bobby?
Just under the police department, I know Bob hasn't given his report yet, but Bob is gonna send you and I an email about appointing a part-time police officer, and Bob gave me his resume and everything. I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and appoint David Modio. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Yes, and if you would, just to lead, what's leading us up to this is that some of our officers are being hired by Troy PD, Albany County Sheriff's
Full-time
Department.
positions, right, Bob?
Full-time positions, and those departments are not allowing them to work per se for the first 6 months part-time, so I'm gonna be short. And, so I need to prepare ourselves for it. So that's why I'm asking for this. I did a background check on
Do you guys?
He's a state correctional officer in the administrative portion. And
You've seen this, right? In the past time.
he works for
Here's another one if you guys want to.
part-time police department out by in Little
Hold
Falls,
off on the
but he'll be
motion,
leaving there.
Circle back. Then you can time it over.
Part-time.
Okay. All right. So,
By the way, I had a chance to talk with Pat Russo about deputies working for the village, and he said, definitely not.
I've
He
had
said,
that conversation with him as well.
any communities within Rensselaer County, he's a no. Working outside Rensselaer County, he's worried of conflicts. That's what he told me.
And I understand, I respect his decision. The City of Troy, the other agencies, they have no problem with it. It's just that they got the probationary periods that these guys have to serve. Some of them are trying to get them to, like one of our officers, Tom Bass, has been with us. Based on his experience here, they may waive his probation period to promote to stay part-time with us. So. But I don't have that decision yet, so I can't wait.
Well,
Is the probationary period 6 months or a year?
Some departments are 6 months, some are a year. Troy PD usually goes a year, but there's been some changes going on down there, so they're thinking that they might be able to do these things again. Brand new hirees, meaning they just come out of the academy, they want to keep them for a year.
That's a year.
no? Anything else, Bobby?
Nope.
All right.
Bob, I would like to say, I'd like to see these guys get around to know these people in the village, the residents, because I met a new cop the other night because I had to call him for a certain thing, you must know about it, and I didn't even know who he was, so I wish they'd get around, introduce themselves, make themselves friendly to the village people. That would work out great,
I
but we're
completely
not,
agree with that.
we're not doing what we
I
should be
think we
doing.
need to be out a little bit more,
That's
knocking
right.
on doors.
And I didn't even know that he had introduced himself to me because I didn't know who that
I
he
think
was.
that particular officer's been on midnights for some time, and so I'm trying to switch him through, so that's probably one of the reasons why.
What's that?
That particular officer you're speaking about,
Yeah.
I think he's been on midnight since he came with us, so, you know, I haven't had the opportunity to, like, work him through, so we might
Okay.
be starting to see these
But
guys.
that would be nice to get him to present himself with people in the residents. People would have more respect for our police officers, I think.
Yep, no, I agree.
I'll make a suggestion. You often use your Facebook to tell things about the police. That might be a nice way to introduce new topics.
That's a good idea.
That's allowed in there.
There's some positives to that and some negatives to that.
Okay. Well, it's just saying, you say there's,
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people can't comment, it's fine. I don't think that's a good idea.
Why? What would they possibly say on social media?
Nothing positive would come out of that.
I do understand what you're saying.
All right. You said you anything else? Was
No,
on it?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Kevin, anything?
Been working, trying to get NIMO to fix numerous streetlights that are out in the village. One problem we discovered was that somebody's shooting out the lights with a pellet gun or BB gun.
Wow.
The police did a canvass of all the lights.
What?
Did they think 30?
We
I shot
30 of them. Not being shot out by lights.
Just
30 of them
the lenses.
that of lights going out, that just the standard maintenance as well as
Okay.
somebody's being shot out.
Okay. It's like, whoo.
It's not just happening in the village, it's happening in the town as well, so I don't know if you've got any calls on that or not, no?
That's one way to get them fixed.
Well, they're not breaking the bulbs, they're breaking just the lenses.
Well, then they need to work hard. I'm kidding.
Brian's comments do not reflect it anyway. All right,
I remember
thank
it's
you.
been 3 years out at the end of our street, right? On and off, on, yeah.
Yeah, it's never quick. All right. Thank you guys. Do you guys have any other questions or anything for Neil, Josh?
Thank you,
All
guys.
right. Thank you again, guys, for everything you've been doing for us for today, plowing. Wow. Hopefully we have many more days of 45-degree weather. All right, let's go back then to the treasurer's report. Do we have a treasurer's report? I know she was working on some things. She's getting more caught up, but there's been so many things going on. Do you have anything?
Well, the only report she sent today was the
Yep.
on the FEMA as far as the village expenses for the flood.
And make
Yeah.
sure the bottom, it has the wrong storm listed. Just make sure it changes that.
Hurricane Irene.
Just FYI.
Probably working off an old file.
Ah.
All right. All right. So I guess no motion to receive a treasurer's report then needed. Please report, Bob.
Some of these numbers are going to reflect the end of the year, and we'll talk about the end of the year first. For the year 2017, we handled 1,450 calls that came into the station here. A number of arrests for the year of 2017 were 136. Just for the month of December to January of 2017, we handled 93 calls. 10 of them were arrests. They range from aggravated unlicensed operations, driving while intoxicated, menacing, and lawful possession of marijuana. We had a serious animal abuse case here that the officers were involved in, that we were able to get in, rescue these animals, as well as make an arrest on. There was also one probation violation. We had their snow emergency. We were out working with Neil. There was 2 cars towed, and about 4 or 5 tickets that were issued out for people that were not compliant. Code Blue went into effect on our Facebook. Brian had also assisted with the Code Blue. We had some inquiries during the cold weather. We were making places available, reaching out. So fortunately, though nobody needed them, they were just making the inquiries. So hopefully the cold is going away and we won't have to. I shouldn't say that. And the only other thing is getting back to our Facebook. We'll probably.
Well, I wasn't saying put
No.
pictures out there, but I'm saying that we have new officers now,
Right.
and their names are gone.
What we do on our Facebook, though, is we try to keep updated on Code Blue, other issues that are coming up in the emergencies, et cetera, et cetera. So we encourage people to please follow it on Facebook, and also you can submit comments for concerns and questions as well.
We could always put a police page on our website.
Well, since we're building a new one.
Okay.
New police department? You didn't tell me that.
Yes. Oh, oops. New website.
Hopefully
I mean, that could be
out
some officer bios. As long as we're checking it regularly and it's not 4 years outdated, that'd be a great idea.
Agreed.
Great idea.
Yeah, and there's no
Agreed.
commenting on there.
That's true.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
All right. And Bob, I've spoken with a couple people who are also noticing that vehicles are not getting taken care of during snow emergencies. So I think at this point, I know my thought is I think we're kind of done warning at this point. We've gone through a couple snowstorms and it's a pretty important situation, so people should know that we're kind of. I mean, you guys, in a lot of cases, go the extended to see if you can contact them, but at this point, I think we're kind of like we need to get this taken care of, and people need to know.
I had a conversation with an individual who had 2 motorcycles that were parked here, who just told me to tell the highway department to plow them in. And I said, I don't think you want the highway department to come in like that. So as I went by later on, he was shoveling them out. And I told me he's going to have to move them up on the backyard.
Yeah, right next to his propane tank. Yeah.
So
Are you kidding or being?
No, I'm not. I was there. I saw it today.
I agree. I had some comments from some people down off Elm Street in that area there that were, asking why they can't park the opposite way on the street when we were trying to tell them to park properly and such.
Mm-hmm.
The parking was becoming an issue. I think the officers have taken the time to explain. And you're right.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see it in court this upcoming Thursday when they're coming in here.
All right.
They understand that they're pulling out into oncoming traffic.
I think the biggest problem here, again, and we've talked about this, it's not the residents of the village, it's the tenants that live in the village that just don't seem to be understanding that there's a problem from taking out your garbage to parking your cars. So it's the village residents are great about it. They understand. They get out there right away, move the vehicles. It's the other ones that you got to wake up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Tell them that it's time to get your car.
The ticket would be a wake-up call.
I think if you write a couple tickets, you'll get a greater understanding of the situation.
Either that, you go out and it's not there. And
Couple toes, and you'll get really figured out.
Me.
Anything else, Bob?
No.
Looking for motion to approve the police report.
Motion.
Second.
You get that, Downing, Brian? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, Bob.
Carries. Thank you. Code enforcement report. Mark? Do you have the human service report?
Just for the summer, I haven't done a year-end report. I have to look, because my year-end report all has to be complete, so I have to work on that one. Basically, the main push in December was the multifamily letters that we were sending out. Everybody hasn't had the biennial inspections done. So we did get that project done, and now it's sending letters out and it's following up on them. When we don't hear back, we sent out a number of second notices. Some people are getting violations or a second notice of violation, and with the explanation that the next step may be to go to court. So that's really been the emphasis, I think, for December and going into January. Work on those, following up on those. Court, we didn't get as much done as we would have liked for our first time in with Andy, but I think as we go forward, I am very optimistic that it's going to work out very well.
Good. Good.
Anytime anybody has any questions, I can
Do we have a court date for our big case for John Street yet?
We are working on a potential resolution on that particular property. Our next court date, generally for the code cases, is next week, the 18th.
That'd be great news for those folks down there. Thank you.
We're working on that.
Great. Anything else? Any other questions for Mark? Looking for a motion to approve the code enforcement report.
Motion.
Second.
Bobby and Karen. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, Mark.
Abstentions? Carries. Thank you, Mark.
You see you're making progress. It makes a difference.
Clerk's reports.
Oh, Judy and I rack our brains trying to figure out what to put on this thing. It's like,
Can add a whole nother page. to the
okay,
agenda.
well,
Seriously.
everybody knows that Wednesdays is 4, or she's here from 6 until 8. We answer pretty much all of the court cases, court calls, and I think we had 10 today.
Although
right?
you're not supposed to. That's not part of.
Well, they don't push
I know.
the
I
right
know.
buttons. Dispatching the police, garbage calls have been rampant. Streetlights, a lot of reports of streetlights out. Kevin just asked me about. I've got probably 3 pages to go again. Issued 2 charitable game permits after the background checks from the police department, and the paperwork is back from Rensselaer County concerning Oakwood Suey and their zoning.
Okay.
So the planning board zoning.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Gail today, who's back in town after visiting her son that was in the hospital down south. Try to set a meeting up for that to get that done.
Okay.
And we'll probably have to have a local law change on the or
We will, on their
zoning.
request for
Yeah.
the zone change. that's
I'll
gone
get that
in,
paperwork too.
Gone to the county for recommendation.
Okay.
Great.
So we would go to the planning and zoning board for recommendation, but it's something that this town.
Correct.
Or, strike, this village board of trustees will, will have to address, and it will be through law.
Right.
All right.
That's it.
And
Great.
where do we stand on planning board now? Did I see that we are short 3?
We
Yeah.
have been short 2, and
The planning board was short 1, and my friend left me last week. We were on 3. Now we're down to 2. We need at least 3.
yeah. Well, I know that's in
Better
the
to
agenda
have
that we're
5.
looking
Who's on
for.
the board
Yeah.
still? Who's still on the board?
Aaron Baczynski and Dennis Casey.
Hey, Ann, when is grievance day? Do we decide in February when we're gonna do grievance day?
That's up to Tony.
Oh, they haven't decided. I thought we'd bring it up, we thought we always brought up in January, so the date in February.
I will add that to my notes to ask Tony.
I'm not sure.
Tony usually gives me the thing to put in the paper.
Yeah, but we gotta set a, for us guys to sit around here, we
Right.
gotta know when.
He's got the particular date
Okay.
Okay.
when he does it.
I'll ask
So
him.
usually we run in January.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a note of it and get a hold of him.
Thank you for bringing that up, Bob.
One day, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Fran? Looking for motion to approve the clerk's report?
Motion?
Bobby, second.
Second.
Karen, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Community service report. I have it here from Jerry. They completed 115 hours of work for the month of December. Projects included but are not limited to weekly cleaning town of Hoosick office space, raked leaves, removed debris, and emptied garbage cans in village parks, detailed police cars, cleaned water plant, fall cleanup on both greenway trails, completed building the computer room and the police station, which looks terrific, painted the basement floor in the police station, and cleaned up highway equipment. And we are working on a project down in the basement for them to help us work on the computer room and get the new the filing cabinets from the school in. Any questions on that? I don't know if I can answer them, but I can certainly take them. All right, looking for a motion to approve community service report. Brian, second.
Second.
Thank you, Karen. On fire on these seconds tonight, Karen.
Take that spot.
It's not here. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. With that, I think we are ready to move on to old business. 62 Mechanic Street. We got exactly 0 bids back when we put it out there after all of the dialogue we've had on it. I don't know what your thoughts are. My thoughts are simply to just maybe try again when the weather's a little bit warmer and people are starting to think about that in the springtime. Do you guys have any thoughts on it?
0 bids as far
As in-
purchasing
Yeah, responses back.
I think our restrictions were too
stringent?
Well, I know that one individual who had expressed a lot of interest in it ended up going a different route, but picked up a bunch of properties that he's working on. So I think that took that individual out of it. I don't know. Maybe it's worth putting them back out at less. What was it?
What was our minimum?
It was
Like
minimum
5,000?
5. Yeah.
As a
Do you want to try for a lower bid?
if that particular individual's not interested, I think we have a tough time.
Yeah, I agree. 'Cause that individual has a track record of a good track record as far as renovating properties in the village, which I'm not opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
We have enough landlords with bad track records that I don't want to be interested in that property. We lower the price.
The only asbestos issue is the exterior that's under the
It's-
siding, correct?
It's the
It's
asbestos
not-
shingles
right.
on the siding, right?
It's
the
not
siding.
walls or plumbing, insulation or anything, so.
Well,
Is
there
that-
probably is asbestos insulation in the cellar too. I don't.
That's
Mark can
likely.
probably answer that. I don't know. Is there any in the small amount? But primarily it's the shingles, right? The siding, I should say, underneath the siding.
Yeah, and that's, you know, where a lot of the expense comes in.
Right, because
If you were a homeowner, as a normal homeowner, you could take that off and bag it and bring it to, like our facility and be done with it. But
Wow.
in this case,
Mark, what was the demolition total?
like
73?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we do something else? Probably is there somewhere? I don't want to say group to donate to like Habitat, like it's. But I mean, is there some organization that could make use of the structure?
It's got to be some organization that's ready to take on the cost and
Yeah,
fixes.
yeah,
That's the
No,
problem.
that's what I mean. I don't know if
you-
there's a.
I don't know. Nothing I can jumps off for me, but I'm content to let it wait for a month or two, or possibly try to put out the bid
Controlled
in
burn?
a bit.
It's been sitting empty for.
Does the fire department want it?
4 years.
Actually, the
Really?
fire
Yes.
department uses it for training.
Yeah, I talked to the mayor.
Mayor,
What's that?
the fire department uses it for training.
I don't think so.
they don't allow that stuff.
What's that?
They don't allow that stuff anymore.
That's generally frowned upon by pretty much everyone
And
who
I'm
would
out
have
of
a
ideas.
voice in that.
Bobby, you're getting me in trouble.
That's the whole idea.
I know where you live.
Table is just pretty.
What's that? I think we should table it for at least a month or possibly two. I say we table it for a month and see if we want to decide to put it out for bid again in February. Does that sound alright?
Yeah.
We have to have a motion for tabling. Motion to table.
Motion.
Thank you, Bob Downing. Second, Karen again. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you.
But at some point, we do have to come up with a resolution
Yep.
for that, whether it's,
Yep.
we're gonna
What
have to
to
bite the
do.
bullet, or we're gonna have to do something, but we have to.
If
do
it's
something.
if it's something where we have to bite the bullet, I want to make sure that I have a better understanding of next year's budget before.
No, I totally
Yes.
agree.
Yep. And Denise will definitely agree with that.
Mid-thirties.
Right.
All right. Snowmobile agreement. Brian, you want to take
Yes.
this one?
Sure. The Snowmobile Club generally uses the northern leg of the Greenway. It's been an ongoing yearly agreement we have with them. They do a great job helping with maintenance of the Greenway. They're very respectful of the property. We're really glad to have them. And the northern leg, part of the reason motorized vehicles are not permitted on the Greenway is because of what it can do to the surface. And that can get expensive, and the Greenway doesn't have a lot of money to fix that. But the Snowmobile Club does come in and take care of any disturbances of the surface. And they're very active with the Greenway, so we're happy to have them. They do, while they're in town, they may get fuel at Cumberland Farms, or they might stop in at Iron. We're really glad to have them, and the whole purpose of the Greenway is to bring people here to use it, whether they live here or not. We are a little late on it. We had the wrong email address for Mr. Kilgard, so once we straighten that, it was some guy
You
in
got it.
Norway. I got it from Shelley. All right?
In Norway.
I'm sure he was very excited about the trail, though.
Yeah, I explained why Gary wasn't getting back to me. So, like, are you there? So, it's like, did you yawn or something? I don't know. So, we did get a hold of him. Andy revised the agreement that was existing just to change some of the language, to strengthen a few parts for both parties to help it flow better. They said that their meeting is this coming...
The 10th.
week, the 10th?
Yep.
So,
Tomorrow.
they will... I think he said they foresee being able to sign it.
Yeah, we just had to do a name change on
Yeah.
who the who's listed as a president.
So I think we can. I mean, I'm happy with it. The Greenway Committee is happy with the rules and the agreement. The mayor looked it over.
Yep.
Andy, great
Yep.
job on that. So that's all.
What we could do is take a motion to authorize me to sign it, assuming they're okay with it.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
that's-
Okay. So in that case, I'm looking for a motion.
I will make that motion.
Brian, thank you.
Second.
Karen, seconds. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Rob, I just have one other
Yeah,
thing.
certainly.
The assessor just responded back. It's the third Tuesday in February. It's the 20th.
Bob, you get
and
that?
From 5 to 9 is grievance night.
Third Tuesday.
Yep, third Tuesday. It's February 20th from 5 to 9.
Thank you.
Got it all set up.
That's what Tony says, yeah.
Well, Bob knew it. He
that's
was supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, right.
All right. The next one is public access of records. We postponed the discussion until this month, and we're going to try to postpone the discussion again because we've had so many other things going on, but we're still looking to get a policy to bring to you guys. So that's all in terms of FOIL and all the things that fall into that. So, Andy, you have anything else to add?
I do not at this time.
Neither do I. So we'll move on. Discussion concerning Hoosick Rising and Economic Development position. Brian?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we've had Hoosick Rising on hold since Briggs left her position and moved back to New Hampshire in the fall. I think September, right, was the end of her time with us, and we
think so, yeah.
certainly missed her. We've had a lot of other things going on, so we did put this aside for the time being. I spoke with Denise this past week. The Economic Development Fund has not much in it at this point. I think it's a little over $6,000. That money had been allocated for Briggs' position at, was she 20 or 25 hours a week, Kevin? Do you remember?
I think
it was 25. So I'm not sure it makes sense to necessarily hire somebody with that amount of money in there, but one of the avenues we can explore is the small cities account. It's money through HUD that is specific, it's earmarked for specific uses, so it's not village taxpayer money, but it is money that we can only use for X, Y, and Z. One of the things Denise and I are working on is speaking with HUD to see if that can be used for this position or economic development in general. One of the things Kevin and I have been talking about ideas of maybe making this more like a bid, like the Troy Downtown Improvement District, and changing how Hoosick Rising operates, changing the name, giving it a reboot as what it needs to. It's a new mission for what it needs to do.
Yeah, I think Brian and I both agree that it shouldn't be a village-run organization. It should be a local business organization.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, to take it out of because it's been pretty much a village-run, village-organized entity, to take it out of our hands and give it to business owners, and have whoever the economic development person is, be the person who facilitates that for the behalf of as a representative of the village. And in that note, I had mentioned to Kevin briefly before the meeting, but share the notes too, a thought of if we can allocate some of that money from those small cities account to use for this, would it make sense to look at keeping the number of hours the same, but having a team of people, maybe 2 or 3 people, that one works with business development and works with our businesses in town, and one works with helping promote events where they're kind of splitting the duties. Briggs did a lot. Kind of a 3-for-1 idea, just to put it out there as another way to help boost that particular aspect of our village in our future.
I was approached by a couple of business owners that said, just make sure what happened to Hoosick Rising and make sure it doesn't go away. So I think we should work on getting that back, at least in the interim, is to get the meetings going again, just so we generate some ideas and some suggestions of what should we do with the group as we go forward.
I agree. I was actually looking toward February 6th. It's a Tuesday, to just send out a meeting and date for Hoosick Rising, the group to reconvene and talk about that stuff. Is that date?
Sure.
Probably just to put out. All right, so we'll say the February 6th.
Great. That'll be before our next
TV,
meeting, so you guys can come back with some more information.
Location,
more suggestions from the
TBD.
group.
Maggie, can we use your place? Just kidding. You're the only business owner here, right? Surprise! What's that?
Yes.
Yes. I'll reach out to you.
Pedicure.
then.
Get my monthly pedicure. All right. Thank
All right.
you. All right.
That's all I have on that.
Great. New business. Waterfront development update. Brian.
Wow. You guys are gonna be sick of me if you're not already. All right. This past fall, we accepted B&L's proposal to work on the waterfront development project. It's a planning process that's going to be a comprehensive community vision with appropriate development, not just along the riverfront, but to enhance our physical and visual public and the visuals of the waterfront, the character of the town, improving the ability of the community to take advantage of our river as tourism and recreation. And additionally, there's a land use inventory funded by a Hudson River Valley Greenway grant associated with this. And what that does is it takes a look at not only what land is being used for in the village, but also is a structure being used as it is a purpose. So if it's a one-family home, is it a one-family home? Is it someone running a business out of the garage and they're not supposed to be? There's a few other aspects like that. Well, how's our land being used that are tied in with this? Committee is there's a few people who have said yes for that. If anybody else would like to be on that committee, I would really appreciate that participation. Looking for a meeting on Tuesday the 23rd at 6 o'clock with that group. If anyone's interested, email me or reach out after the meeting. Includes anybody else on the board.
Okay.
Evan, I'm looking at you. Filling up your calendar.
Very subtle with that.
Yeah.
I just nominated Ben. So
Can I make a motion for that? Okay.
Second.
But I just want to give an update on that. But seriously, could use other people from the community feedback, and may sign you up for that too. But it's the more people we have with a voice in this, the better. So that's all I got.
All right. Thank you. Brian, I'm sure we'll be back to you shortly.
Yeah, I got
Youth Center and Hasty 3 support discussion. Brian.
Well, actually, I'll start. Do we have an update on where we are with that? I know, Ann, we were looking at that agreement. I know there's been a lot with the holidays in our plates. Has that gotten to...
Andy has it.
Andy has it. It's for... There was an agreement with Hasty 3 years ago that gave... was it $3,000 and then $2,000 in kind? Hoosick Area Partnership for Youth.
Owned the youth center or used the youth center. They've now in the
Yes.
armory. I did send it to you, but I will again.
I appreciate that. You and I are working.
Okay. Oh, that's all I got.
All right.
Oh, that's not true. There's more to come.
Discussion on wood burning appliance rules in the village. Brian.
Sorry. Yeah, I brought up, we've been working with Mark in terms of an issue that, and just say out there, most people who have wood burning appliances are responsible. They do take care of their neighbors and take care of everything, but there are incidents that I think can impact health and safety of neighbors. There's a lot of neighborhoods in this village where homes are close to each other, closer than some other parts of the village. And I, with working with Mark on an issue, ran into, he doesn't have as much, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, on the code where it's really has more to do with the residence it's attached to than adjacent properties. It's not as strong there. And I wanted to start a discussion on proposing some sort of local law that will give code enforcement more solid legal backing to deal with these situations. Specifically, is there nuisance smoke that is setting off someone's smoke detector in the neighboring home that kind of violates private use and enjoyment of your own property? And part of that is giving a legal definition of chimney heights as it relates to adjacent properties within 25-50 feet. Just as one example, obviously there's smoke at startup, but to give you a little bit more legal authority for the handful of people who are not necessarily being responsible to their neighbors. But, yeah.
What's a burning appliance? Like a smoker?
Wood burning appliance, a wood stove.
Or like a smoker? in the yard?
I believe the outdoor hot water and heaters, those are not allowed in the village, are they, as it is?
What do you mean?
But this is in interior, so perhaps a pellet stove, but more of a
you
wood
meant
stove
outside
or
ones.
fireplace. Yeah, the outside furnaces.
Wood burning furnace.
Yeah.
So it's emissions coming?
Partially emissions, yeah. So if your neighbor has a wood stove and the stack isn't high enough and your fire alarm's going off at 2:30 in the morning. Mark's been very helpful.
Mark, what is the code for wood burning? Do you have to have a chimney that's made out of cement, or you don't?
Well, they have to have a metal one that's UL listed, correct? But if it has, the height is determined by the property it's on, not your neighbors.
Correct.
Right, and what I'm saying here is we should probably look at, in those instances, because we have homes so close, there might be cases where, all right, maybe that stack needs to be higher than the neighbor's home.
Boy, you gotta include the wind factor too, that's an issue too. If the
Right.
stack is way up here, and it's still gonna blow no matter what.
It will, but it higher
to me,
up
it's
is...
a common sensing. If your neighbors had whatever, if there's common sense there, they wouldn't do it,
Right, but people don't have common sense. That's why we have laws and
Well,
code
they don't teach it
enforcement.
anymore.
So it's to give Mark a little
Those school
more...
teachers.
Yeah. Just to give Mark, I think, a little more clear definition when it
Right,
comes to
but-
adjacent properties.
But
of
he should have
this.
stuff on his books, heights of chimneys and heights of this and all that stuff.
I mean, we just ran into that, sort of, with wood-fired pizza, and we had the owner raise his stack on his How did that play into?
Did that do any better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
height.
Once we finally convinced them to do it,
Right.
yeah, they took care of the issue, as far as I know.
Mhm.
So
Well, we haven't heard anything more.
But there
so-
may be different codes with commercial than residential.
And we're in the process really of kind of doing the same thing in this particular issue.
All right.
Which, by the way, there's a new height, and it's actually been pretty much solved the problem. But you can't just go in and say stop using it, because technically you have to go through a lot more steps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and some of this stuff I've never dealt with before too, so we're kind of learning together to try to deal with this particular issue. It's not an issue
Mhm.
that's, well, I mean, it did, pizza oven was once, now we have, this
Yeah.
is a little different scenario, but it ended up being the same repair, really. If that indeed works out, I guess you just did that over the weekend.
Yep. Yeah, and it's to say, I mean, there are VOCs in wood. There are other issues, and I know that
Almost done.
I've heard from somebody else that they have a similar issue, but
Pellet stoves usually go straight through the wall.
what's that?
Yes.
Pellet stoves usually
Yeah,
go
those
straight through the wall.
but those are included as a wood burning appliance, but not specific to what I'm addressing. I was just trying to as an example for.
But you couldn't tell them to raise up the
No, that
emissions.
would. Well, those burn clear with after startup anyhow.
They smoke when they first start.
Yes, and that's not that's a reality of using those appliances.
They're,
So
they're a different beast.
yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I mean, I just wanted to throw it out if anyone else on the board thinks it's a worthy thing to look into.
Follow up with Mark and see.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because it keeps
Yeah, it loses
keep a lot
common
of-
sense.
Keep a lot of fires down. From
Yep.
Things like that happening.
All right.
I'll talk more and more.
All right.
Cool.
All right.
I'm
Thank
done.
you. You don't want to take the next one?
Secret's out. I hope not.
Yeah. All right, discussion relating to counsel for the village to negotiate with St. Gobain and Honeywell. As you guys are aware, we're basically not where we wanted to be. We don't have, as of yet, some form of interim settlement or overall settlement with the situation that we've had and taken some serious expense on over the past several years. So we have a resolution that we're going to present tonight. That's going to authorize, if passed, the law firm of Nolan and Heller to commence litigation on behalf of the village of Hoosick Falls in regard to St. Gobain and Honeywell. So, with your permission, I'm going to read the entire resolution so everyone is clear, and then we'll put up for discussion. Resolution authorizing commencement of the litigation on behalf of the village of Hoosick Falls. Whereas, as a result of the use, discharge, release, and disposal of materials containing perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, other synthetic chemicals referred to as polyfluoroalkyl compounds, PFCs, and other volatile organic compounds, VOCs, by parties including St. Gobain Performance Plastics Corporation and Honeywell International. PFOA, other PFCs, and VOCs have been released into the environments in and around the vicinity of the village of Hoosick Falls. And whereas such use, discharge, release, and disposal of PFOA, other PFCs, and VOCs by St. Gobain and or Honeywell have resulted in the presence of PFOA, PFCs, and or VOCs in soil and or groundwater in areas within and adjacent to the village of Hoosick Falls. And whereas the village of Hoosick Falls has suffered and incurred and will continue to suffer and incur certain damages as a result of such PFOA, PFC, and VOC contamination. And whereas the village of Hoosick Falls, through its elected officials and retained legal counsel, have duly attempted to resolve legal issues pertaining to such PFOA, PFC, and VOC contamination, as described herein with representatives of St. Gobain and Honeywell. And whereas such efforts by the village of Hoosick Falls have not been successful in resolving such issues concerning PFOA, PFCs, and VOC contamination in and around the village of Hoosick Falls, and whereas it is determined to be in the best interest of the village of Hoosick Falls to pursue and prosecute certain legal rights and remedies with respect to such disputes concerning PFOA, PFC, and VOC contamination in and about the village of Hoosick Falls, as hereinbefore described, now therefore be it resolved by the village board of trustees of the village of Hoosick Falls in regular session duly convened as follows. 1. The village board of trustees of the village of Hoosick Falls hereby authorizes the law firm of Nolan and Heller, LLP, under the terms and conditions of an existing retainer agreement by and between the village of Hoosick Falls and such law firm dated June 8, 2017, to take such actions and proceedings on behalf of the village of Hoosick Falls against certain parties as such law firm deems appropriate, which may include St. Gobain and or Honeywell, to protect and promote the legal rights of the village of Hoosick Falls with respect to all legal and or equitable remedies associated with the presence of PFOA, PFCs, and VOC contamination in soils, groundwaters, and all other environmental media in areas within and adjacent to the village of Hoosick Falls. Looking for a motion?
Motion.
Brian, second?
Second.
Bob, thank you. All right, discussion. David, do you want to say anything apart from what was already in this resolution?
There's not much to add. To the extent people want to know what's transpired in the discussions we've had with the companies to date, I will summarize it by simply stating the companies are not willing to pay very much, but expect to get virtually a complete release in return from the village. And that has been kind of a non-starter, as you can imagine. And one of the other points I suppose I should mention is this. There are costs that the village has had which are well documented. Mundane things such as lab testing, things like that, about which there's very little mystery. And the company has asked for documentation on those costs. And some of this has gotten rather petty. You can present to them what the costs have been, indicate that, here's the invoice, and then of course they want to see the canceled check. Okay, fair enough. That gets a little bit ridiculous after a while in terms of the company sitting there as if they're the ultimate arbiter as to whether these costs were duly incurred. But it gets actually worse than that in some of these discussions. We've raised, for example, the issue of the costs or the revenue that the village has lost because of the loss in water and sewer revenue due to the problem. And the company's response to that has been, well, that is a loss of revenue, that's not a cost. We won't discuss that with you at this point. It won't be part of this sort of interim or preliminary arrangement. Well, that happens to be a rather major ticket item. And there are other items which I suppose, without going into all the details, and I'd rather not get into any more details right now, which kind of fall into that category. Now, I can assure everyone we will have more discussions with the companies. The papers on which we would bring this lawsuit have been prepared. If somebody told me file them tomorrow, I could file them tomorrow. That being said, we will have further discussions over the next number of weeks, and we will see where we are, and at the appropriate time, we will, if necessary, bring a lawsuit. I think it's useful for the companies to know where the village is at this point, and it may encourage them to be a bit more forthcoming. I'm not wildly optimistic. I've spent most of my adult life litigating one sort of major or maybe not so major environmental matter after another. And the sad truth is that to prompt things to a useful resolution often requires commencing a lawsuit. And lawsuits are really the best way to get into meaningful discussions. So
I think that's...
I don't know if Mr. Gilchrist wants to add anything to that, but that's...
I think that's unfortunate and disappointing, but I think that may also have to be the necessary step, which is too bad.
I think when we hired Mr. Engel, I think most of the board members wanted some kind of settlement, and that was our hope. And I'm still hoping that somewhere along the line, before we do litigation, we do have some kind of settlement from the company. But I think this is a necessary step at this time.
I agree. I think this is a one step closer to getting to an agreement. If we do this, at least they understand we mean business, and we're not going to wait any longer for them to make us whole.
And I'd also add that this village is built on good neighbors, and I think when you look at how much we've been through as a community, not just with the water, but in general over the last few years, that good neighbors is why we're resilient. And I hope these companies will decide to be good neighbors. They talk about being neighbors, but at the same time, I think I'm looking forward to voting yes on this, because I don't think we need to keep getting kicked while we're down. We're just because we're a little village doesn't mean we can't be tough.
And I also want to add that I don't want the people who work for St. Gobain presently to think that the village is looking the blind eye to them, because that's not the case at all. I think personally, I know I've taken into consideration the whole time that we've worked in this, trying to come to a resolution. But if they're not going to work with us, we have no other choice but to do this. You know, we're a village, but we're a business as well, and you know the taxpayers are our customers. So we need to move forward, and this is the only way. I think the only choice we have right now.
Any other discussion? Okay, in that case, we're looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
Trustee Downey?
Yes.
Greg? Bushner?
Yes.
Collins?
Yes.
Price?
Yes, for me too. All right, passes with Ben absent. Okay, we have another resolution. I will again read this one additionally as well. This is the resolution authorizing commencement of litigation on behalf of the Village of Hoosick Falls in regard to Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC. Whereas a notice of claim dated November 20, 2017 was filed with the Village of Hoosick Falls, hereinafter Village, by the law firm of Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC. And whereas thereafter an amended notice of claim dated November 27th, 2017 was filed with the Village by the law firm of Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC. And whereas through such notices of claim, such law firm has notified the Village that it intends to commence an action against the Village to recover alleged damages in the amount of $582,872.21, together with interest and costs. And whereas said amount claimed by Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC, as alleged damages are characterized by such law firm as including $461,110.24 in legal fees, costs, and disbursements of Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC, and $121,761.97 attributed to alleged services provided to the Village by Being Communications Incorporated. And whereas the Village disputes the allegations, claims, and demands interposed by Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC, and or Being Communications Incorporated in such notice of claim, and whereas the Village sought to resolve such dispute with Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC, and Being Communications Incorporated, but such efforts were not successful, and whereas it is determined to be in the best interest of the Village to pursue and prosecute certain legal rights and remedies with respect to such dispute, as hereinbefore described. Now therefore be it resolved by the Village Board of Trustees in the Village of Hoosick Falls in regular session duly convened as follows. The Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Hoosick Falls hereby authorizes the law firm of Tazinski, Gilchrist, Cavalier, and Tingley. I didn't get it right. Tazinski, Gilchrist, Cavalier, and Tingley, PC, as village attorneys to take such actions and proceedings on behalf of the Village of Hoosick Falls against certain parties as such law firm deems appropriate, which may include Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth and or Being Communications Incorporated, to protect and promote the legal rights of the Village of Hoosick Falls with respect to the allegations, claims, and demands as interposed in the notices of claim interposed by the law firm of Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth, PC, as here and above described. Looking for a motion.
Motion.
Brian, second.
Second.
Karen, Andy, do you have anything you want to add to the resolution before we discuss it amongst the board?
Yes. As the resolution stated, upon review of the record, and in particular the invoices that were provided ultimately to the village by the law firm, the board members and certainly my office, and we have had the assistance of Mr. Engel reviewing them as well, as the matters are clearly related with the PFOA issue and the St. Gobain and Honeywell matters, that we do have some concern on behalf of the scope of services, the services provided by the law firm, the time incurred as disclosed in those invoices, and we would certainly recommend that it's in the overall best interest of the village to try to resolve the matter as well. As the resolution indicates, we did enter into discussions with the law firm. the board should know and does know because of the notices of claim that were filed with the village, that the firm itself has retained outside counsel to pursue a claim against the village for the fees and disbursements. We did use good faith efforts to try to resolve that prior to the end of 2017. Unfortunately, those efforts were not successful. As David mentioned a moment ago, while litigation is not the first option, and it wasn't in this case, it is often used as a way to promote a resolution. The board should understand, litigation should be properly viewed as just a mechanism to resolve a dispute. There are many ways to resolve disputes. One of them can be negotiation and settlement. There are different kinds of dispute resolution, but one of them can be litigation, and oftentimes that is needed to resolve a disputed matter. We have advised the board that we think this matter does raise certain concerns, and we think the legal rights of the village do need to be protected here. The issue of litigation is one which unfortunately at this point the village cannot avoid. The firm has filed a notice of claim for the amounts the mayor reviewed. And in that notice of claim, it was very clear that the firm does intend to sue the village. This resolution obviously allows the village to protect its legal rights and pursue claims if necessary to resolve that dispute. So that's the resolution before you.
All right. And to be honest, in this, I think these are the discussions that we've had. There's definitely risks to this. The cost of litigating something like this, we don't get to sue for those costs. So this is something that we would end up factoring in. In my own opinion, based on a lot of the concerns that Andy's already listed and some other ones, I just think it's in the best interest of the village, of the taxpayers, to take this step. Again, not the ideal situation in any way, but I think it's the appropriate decision at this juncture.
Andy, any estimate of legal cost for us, at least getting to the court process, just getting there?
All I would tell you is often very, very difficult questions to answer when you're in the litigation mode, simply because once litigation is commenced, it can, quite frankly, can take on a lot of different aspects to it. Okay? It is not a significant investment to either prepare an answer in the event a lawsuit is commenced against the village initially, or quite frankly, to prepare pleadings on behalf of the village to bring this issue into court directly. I will tell you that's not a significant investment in legal fees. However, litigation, we can't sugarcoat this. Litigation can be very costly when you have to go all the way through what is called the discovery process, and oftentimes in litigation there's motion practice. Ultimately, this is the type of case which may need to be tried in front of a jury in state Supreme Court. Those costs can be significant, okay? But to commence the action or to prepare an answer in the event an action is initially commenced by the law firm against the village, that's not a significant investment. As David just said with regard to the company, St. Gobain and Honeywell, this is not a situation where we, on behalf of the village, would not continue to try to resolve this matter. And there are often a lot of opportunities during the course of litigation to do that. But unfortunately, the village is in this position, and I won't say that there's not a choice here, but you do need to be advised that the law firm has filed these notices of claim, indicating that it will bring a lawsuit against the village for the full amount of the demand, which is in the neighborhood of $582,000, which is a significant damage for any municipality, let alone this village.
I think you did offer one other option at one point about the arbiter, where you go in front of other lawyers for arbitration.
That is an option. When there is a disputed legal fee, the matter can be arbitrated. As we have discussed, there are issues that any litigant needs to consider in terms of what forum they're going to be in front of. One of the benefits of having the case in state Supreme Court is that there is the availability of a jury, and we think that that is an option that has great value here in terms of the services that were alleged to have been provided to the village. We think there's benefit to having a jury hear that, understand what was done, and maybe hear what wasn't done, and be able to pass on that, rather than having that in front of simply an administrative or arbitration panel. But that is clearly an option that we've gone over with your board.
In Andy, so in a nutshell, we have two options. One, we can pay the $582,000, or two, we can litigate. Is that correct? We've tried to come to terms to get that number to come down and
That's
to
correct.
come to a reasonable number that we all agreed on. So those are our options, correct? And we're kind of backed into a corner.
At this point, I think that's a fair characterization. And for the record, and you know this, that after the notices of claim were filed, and subject to check, maybe even prior to that, we have been trying to resolve the payment of both the law firm and the communication firm's invoices. And unfortunately, that's not been successful. So a dispute does exist. You're correct. It does need to be resolved.
Okay.
We're clearly in an incredibly difficult place.
Oh.
And this is not an easy decision because there is a lot of money either way, and it's taxpayer money, and I'll abstain from giving my thoughts on the job done. But I think I made those very clear as a resident.
I would suggest
Yes.
that.
I made those very clear as a resident, and I will
That's
leave
correct.
that. But to say, I'm pretty angry that we have to come to this decision, and not at you or the board, but it is unfair for a little village to have to deal with this. And this is an incredibly difficult decision to make.
Do we know how much of that money will be getting back through the consent order, or is that still not known?
Well,
I don't think that
think
provision in the
that's in
consent
the-
order was very solid, so I think that would, if anything, it would come from some form of settlement
that,
or action against companies.
if I may, that gets really to the part of the nub of the problem here. There were two provisions within the consent order which indicated that the companies would be under an obligation to pay the village for the village's expenses. Speaking as someone who's done a lot of this work and dealt with a lot of DEC consent orders, and as someone who, in an earlier time in my life, wrote a lot of DEC consent orders when I was at DEC, I'll try to be kind here. It's not a document which is notable for its clarity, and there is a tremendous ambiguity as to what the companies were committed to do. We've had discussions with DEC on a few limited occasions seeking DEC's assistance on this issue. The bottom line is that the village would be entitled to its cost back regardless. The language in the DEC consent order helps a little bit, but it doesn't help a lot. And it's one thing. Look, the companies conceptually agree in our discussions that they owe the village money. They're not disputing this to the extent when they say we owe you nothing. It's a matter of how much and what the quid pro quo is. As I read the DEC consent orders, there was nothing. The DEC consent order, there was nothing in there which, in the first instance, allowed the companies even to raise the question of a release in exchange for the payments that should have been made under that consent order. And yet that issue was brought in, obviously a long time ago, roughly more than a year ago, probably right at the get-go by the company. And it became sort of part of the woodwork as that consent, as the agreement between the original agreement that was proposed between the village and the companies came forward, that there would be a release. Now we go back to the companies and we say, look, you know, you're not going to get that kind of release for a limited settlement. You know, if you wanted a full release, which is essentially what that was, we'd be talking about an entirely different kind of settlement at this point. But going back to your question, it's in the consent order, but the consent order isn't very clear. And, you know, the definition of what the village's costs were are not clearly set forth in there. And we're left with where we are. And, you know, is there a possibility we'll get an interim settlement with the companies sometime this winter? I allow for that possibility, but it will be, if it happens at all, it will be extremely limited because we're not going to give them a release, you know. And they've been very clear to me in our discussions, and you know, the board should understand this, and the community as a whole should understand this, that the reason why they went to eventually $1,045,000 in their proposal of last year was because they were getting a release. And that was why, at that time, they weren't going through the village's costs with a fine-tooth comb, because they felt they were basically buying the piece with respect to the damage to the village water system. And that is the circumstance that we face. That's the circumstance which really makes it difficult to come to any kind of agreement with them whatsoever right now, short of litigation.
And if I can, I'll follow up on that on the consent order. One can read that consent order to indicate that the companies will work with the village to cover village costs. As David suggests, the language could have been both stronger, clearer, tighter in that regard. One of the issues surrounding the services provided by prior council gives rise to that issue, okay? But I don't believe the village can sit back and simply rely on the order.
Mm-hmm.
And I would concur with what David has said. This is one, and I almost feel compelled to say this to the board. I've come in as your new village attorney. Okay? I was retained and became your village attorney in October. I reviewed a lot of the record.
Mm-hmm.
The board is aware of this. Maybe it's helpful for the village residents to hear it as well. I practiced for many years with David. We did a lot of environmental litigation together.
Mm-hmm.
He was providing excellent service to the village on these environmental claims. But we have the added benefit of understanding the full extent of how this village has been damaged as a result of this contamination event. And those are the claims that really do need to be pursued. They need to be upheld in order to protect the village's interests. That includes not just against the companies that are allegedly responsible for the contamination, but by prior consultants who were working with the village to try to resolve it earlier. This has placed this village without question. I've come at this new, but it's placed the village in a very difficult position. I agree with you. But this does need to get addressed. We need to address this head on, and I think it's wise counsel to say it's got to be addressed. David is correct. Discussions and trying to get this resolved with the companies will be ongoing. Part of those discussions may in fact be getting your prior legal counsel and communications firm an amount that they are willing to take to resolve this matter. That could be part of this. We will coordinate on that matter. Our efforts will try to get this matter resolved. Certainly the work that my office will be doing on the Fitzgerald Morris and Bean matters, get those resolved and behind the village so you can focus on getting the contamination issue addressed responsibly.
Yep.
Address those companies that you feel are responsible for this and get the village's interests protected. And you're well served by David's office doing that.
If I could add one last thought on this, and the mayor may want to add something on this. One of the things that has become apparent, things. I'll start with the second one first. The second one is this. If you look at the consent order, it contemplated the village would get its costs up to that point reimbursed. And then there's another provision that acknowledges that the village is probably going to have ongoing costs. And gee, everybody should work something out so that gets covered as well. As we sit here this evening, the village is incurring costs on account of the PFOA problem. The village pays the electricity, the village pays for the heat. That system couldn't be operating without the involvement of village personnel. There was something I think I recall very early on in all of this that Kevin here pointed out, that the village actually is helping to remediate the aquifer by literally running its water system. And that statement was true the day you made it, remains true today, and the village incurs costs all the time. So I just wanted to clarify that. The second point is, what was the first point, is now the second point, is this. We know a lot more today about how serious and how extensive the contamination problem is than we knew a year ago.
Yeah.
We are now well into the remedial investigation, and the amount of data is rather extraordinary. I'm not going to sit here and go through a full exposition on it, nor could I. But the idea today of, if we were to talk to the companies today and they said, gee, you know, we really need a full settlement and a full release. Any kind of settlement today in which the companies virtually get a full release would have to take into account the extent of uncertainty and risk associated now with our awareness of the extent and severity of the contamination. The numbers that we've seen at McCaffrey Street, at Liberty Street, how far out those high numbers go from the plant site at McCaffrey Street onto neighboring parcels, including parcels owned by the village, are really quite stunning. And similarly, of course, the landfill remains an issue out there, and the numbers at the landfill are numbers that are comparable to what you would expect to see at a plant site. It's that serious. And so there's this whole range of issues that have to be addressed. And I understand why the companies a year ago wanted what amounted to pretty much a full release. But knowing what we now know, it's even more emphatic to say that such a release was not appropriate then, but even now a release can only be arrived at if the number is far beyond anything the companies talked to us about today. So.
And in addition to that, we still know a lot about what we don't know, and they've already added a supplemental investigation to expand the site, and I would expect that to continue as we sort of get a full scope of where this investigation is. But it's obvious to see that these two situations are intertwined. So that's why they're both here. Any other questions, comments from the board?
I'm not against it. I just want to lay everything out there for the taxpayers,
Yep.
because it is a risk that we are taking.
And it's a risk that we've talked about and measured, I think. And it's really, I think, it's been weighing on me, but I think, I don't think I'm confident this is the right step. Any other comments from the board? Kevin?
Based on this gentleman's explanation of the situation, my previous position is moot. I think that since you have been served with a notice of claim, you have no choice. It's already cast in stone for you.
Okay. Yes.
From what Bobby said, it sounded like there had been no offer of a discount from the law firm at all. Is that the case?
We're not going to get into the subject matter of the settlement discussions. Suffice it to say, for the record, that there were good faith settlement negotiations that unfortunately did not resolve the matter.
Thank you, Andy. Yes.
Something very simple but profound that you might want to consider. You've done an excellent job in a complex situation. My cousin was a appellate judge, and he's a arbitrator in New York City, very high profile with companies. And if you would consider a consult, can't hurt anything, they don't charge for consults, to see is there any, even one little hair of anything you can do for the benefit of the situation, you might want to consider a consult with, his name is Anthony Carpinello. He ran, he's been in office, so he does amazing cases. So just consider that number one.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for the
I'd be
record.
willing to call him to see, will you do a consult for Hoosick? He's very high profile.
For the record, I forgot to say we need name and address when you speak. So, could you give us your name and address? I forgot.
Sure, I'll give it to you after.
Oh no, right now. That's how. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier.
Lois Pico.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Michelle Baker, Hoosick Falls. Didn't we authorize a bond of, what was it, the 800,000, whatever, to cover the legal fees? So can we just kind of chalk it up to, crap, we made a mistake, we've learned our lesson, it's going to cost a fortune from what these guys are saying to rehash this all over again. So if we have the money earmarked to pay the bill, pay the thing, and really Firth and Baker is going to look like mud to the rest of the world.
If we paid it, that bond still has to be paid back by the taxpayers over
Yeah.
years.
Exactly.
So the idea of just paying that means we're just committing the community to
Right.
paying that off,
But
and
what
that's.
happens to the bond then if we don't, that money's earmarked for the legal bill?
I think it was necessarily earmarked based on the way the legislation was written. It was kind of described in there. But regardless, that money still has to be shouldered by the taxpayer over
Right.
many years. So if we just pay it because we have the immediate funds from the bond, we still have to pay it back as taxpayers.
Right, but it just sounds like we're going to be paying no matter what.
Well, you're talking to
Interrupt and get to the heart of the matter.
Lorraine.
Which is, that's who we're fighting for. Money should be no object. It's the children.
Thank you, Lorraine.
You should be good
Lorraine,
to friggin' remember it.
Lorraine, please.
What's that woman's name?
Michelle Baker. Who spoke? Yeah.
Where's she?
What's that?
Where's she? Her address.
Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry. Your address?
Hoosick Falls, or Town of Hoosick.
Town of
Or
Hoosick.
Mahar, sorry,
All right.
Mahar Road.
Thank you. Sorry for the record. Any other discussion? Yeah, Mark?
Question, I'm Mark Surnett, 14 Snow Street, and I'm just curious, is there any way through this that the money that does end up being spent for this litigation can become part of what potentially may be paid back from the companies as an expense?
Well, let me take a short run at that.
You heard him say short.
Sure.
You heard him say short.
Our claim against
And who
our
did it,
claim
Mark?
against the companies is going to go well beyond the actual out-of-pocket costs that the village has had.
Mhm.
We'll be looking for a recovery for damages to the village, to the village water system. That claim for damages in our lawsuit will be far larger than any amount that is being claimed by Fitzgerald Morris.
Mhm.
Now, it's not like one necessarily relates to the other, but we're not suing these companies just to get an extra $500,000 to sue them. The numbers are going to be far larger than that.
560, 580 and 80. Not to cover everything.
Right, that wasn't for that, it was for other expenses.
Right,
We
the-
should probably clarify that.
Yeah, the bonds, the legislation had a certain cap for the amount of money that could be, I guess, financed, and what we were able to get through the Pioneer Bank was, I think, 580 and 80, or 560 and 80, or something like that. But it was not, and that was meant to cover, in a sense, to help us with all expenses,
Loss of revenue
immediate.
and everything as
Right.
well.
Right. And that would, what we had from Pioneer would not be enough to.
Even touch the bill.
I wouldn't touch it, but not complete it. Any other questions, comments? Okay, in that case, we're gonna move to a roll call vote.
This is a very hard decision for me, because I don't like to put burden on any of the taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer too, so I don't like, no burden. So if it's the only way we're gonna protect ourselves, I'm gonna have to say yes.
I agree with Bob. I said we, through a lot of thought, yes.
And I can echo what they say and say, I think that especially, I know Andy and Dave aren't just here to collect a check, especially Dave, you've been here without being paid for years, and I truly believe you both have our best interest at heart. Yes.
Yeah, without being redundant, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. We don't have another alternative, and I too don't like the idea of spending taxpayers' money with no guarantee, but in this case, I think we have to take the chance and do what's best for the village. So yes.
Yes.
I can't say any better than Bob did. Yes. All right. Motion passes. Before we discuss elections, I just want to officially thank all of the trustees for their work, for having an executive session every meeting, for getting caught up on all of this information. I just really deeply thank all of you guys for your work on this, because this has been something we've been working on for a while. With that being said, village elections are to be held March 20th, 2018. January 2nd is the first day to sign an independent nomination petition to run for a village office. When is the due date for those to be in? Is it February 16, 18?
Yeah.
I think it's around February 16th or 18th. At this point, we have 3 board members whose time will be ending. The option is yours if you want to mention what you guys will be doing.
I will not be running because I think it's time to get some new blood in here. I've been on the board for a long time. And the circle of life is starting to get shorter and shorter, as we know. And my mother-in-law health isn't good, so I got to be with my wife. So.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I too will not be running again in March. Same thing, my husband's going to retire, so I'm hoping to spend some time down in Florida for a few months. And I know,
You're gonna
Ann, I
give
know you're
this
jealous,
up.
but
You're gonna give this up for that?
But I said, same thing. I've been with the board for 3 years. I think everybody has been great. It's been, we're all in this together, and as taxpayers, it's been a lot to take on. So.
Well, thank you guys, and you will be thanked again many times for your service.
Ben's the other person, right?
Ben is the other
Well,
person.
he's running because he's not here. So
Motion.
I'm signing this petition right now.
So with everything that's transpired, I think people in the community understand what the village is facing, and that we're invested in this very deeply, and we're surrounded by a lot of great people who are working on this. So we're hoping that some people can make some decisions to run and join us.
I may also add, we are losing the one woman on our board, and I think
I have a
that
couple in mind. I'll call them up.
Great, great.
We don't know, but I seriously, I think
to be your friends?
we need more. She's changing her number as soon as she's done. No, I think we should have. I would like to see more young girls and women run for this board, and I think that especially your demeanor, resolve will be especially missed here.
Your mother.
I might miss you a little.
Don't miss me.
So also we're looking to fill
Thank you.
some seats on zoning and planning board, other essential parts of how this community runs. So if you're of any interest at all, please contact the village office, and looks forward to taking your phone calls. In that case, and I have a slight change I want to make sure I highlight, I'm looking for motion to go into executive session to discuss both pending litigation and personnel, with no formal business after.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
can I just ask a question? Terry McGuire,
Yes.
56 White Creek Road. I was working. I got here as soon as I could. 2 things. Did we check on the chickens? The
There are
last
no
time.
chickens.
Yep, they're gone.
There are no
They're gone.
chickens.
Okay,
I took care of
they're
it.
gone.
They were
Okay.
delicious.
Hey now, hey now.
They were delicious.
The next, I hope you didn't eat them.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, better.
Number 2, I just found out, as I went with Mark to inspect my building, that there's now no parking in front of my building on Wilder Avenue. I understand there was a complaint about being able to drive up and down Wilder Avenue. I never received any notification. Right here, right up on top of the hill. The woman across the street does have a driveway, which she chooses not to park in. Mostly the people that park out there are not my tenants. They happen to be the tenants next door. But it does create an issue with snow, if they can't get up and down the driveway, to not be able to park in front of there.
Yep, it's related to local law. Can you give me your phone number now and try to touch base with you tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening? And I can also get you a copy of that local law so you can see.
Okay, but I I obviously didn't know
No,
anything
that's
about it.
that's
and-
all right. That's okay. That's all right.
But, I would like to know if we could perhaps revisit that a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I'm looking for the motion to go into executive session to discuss both pending litigation and personnel with no formal business afterwards.
Motion.
Karen?
Second.
Second. Brian, for the discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.